positive looks. And I guess I'll just move on to, oh, let's see. Steve, you haven't done it yet, have you? My neighbor, you might as well go.
Yeah, I have as much trouble getting off mute as Sam because we're neighbors. I'm over there at Rockwood on the other side of the mall. We flank the mall. I am glad as well of the weather, WSU, and I'm also looking forward to K-State basketball season being over, hopefully after tomorrow night. Little basketball joke there. Sorry. I'm supposed to pick somebody. Let's go with Chris because he always has cool backgrounds.
Thanks, Steve. The mute button is contagious, apparently. Chris Broderick. I'm in the Northbrook neighborhood near 37th and Woodlawn. And one of the things I'm grateful for in Wichita is the cost of living. I saw that we recently jumped up like 80 spots on I don't remember what register it was, but we're up in the 60s now, I think, of affordable, just rated places to live. So that's always good. So, and I will pass it on to, I got to scroll screens.
How about Faith?
Yeah, thank you.
Is
Faith.
that cool? Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Faith Martin. I'm representing East Ridge. And on this International Women's Day, I am grateful that today 2 women were nominated to be 4-star generals, which is pretty freaking awesome. So as a veteran, I am happy anytime we get women all the way up there in the big boss chair. So it's pretty great.
And how about we go with Tracy?
Hi, everybody. Tracy Adams, Harrison Park area. So I am grateful, like I think it was Sam, maybe not, that we have a new head coach at Wichita State, Sam Brown. Very, very excited about that. And I too always appreciate the fact that Wichita is a very clean city.
Awesome. Do we have any other DAB members that we haven't introduced yet?
No DAB members, but Corey might like to introduce himself.
Yes, Corey, and then Becky.
I'm
we'll
Corey
save the
Buckta.
best for last. How's that?
Yeah, I'm Corey Buckta. I'm the Community Services Representative for District 2, and I am grateful for the problem-solving spirit in our city. When there is a problem, people get together and figure out clever and inventive ways to solve it. And I'm feeling this way partly because of the food system master plan that I've had a help in. And so I'm just kind of proud of everyone who had a fingerprint on that. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. And Becky, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm Becky Tuttle, and it is my privilege to be your City Council member representing District 2. And I am going to dovetail a little bit on what Faith said. It is International Women's Day, and I had the unique opportunity today to speak to the W group that used to be Young Professionals, Wichita Young Professionals, and Councilmember Claycomb and myself, and then Commissioners Lopez and Cruz got to speak about our path to being on leadership at this level, at an elected level, and just had some awesome dialogue with folks and some great questions. So truly a highlight of 2021 so far. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And it looks like we have some guests who will report out in a little bit. So I guess technically I didn't call the meeting to order yet, but I would like to call the meeting to order. And if we could get an approval of the agenda for tonight. Corey sent that out earlier. So do we need to have a motion to approve the agenda?
Before we
Becky?
approve, sorry, before
Yes?
we approve,
Yes.
can we amend the order on the agenda? So We would like to have the places for people new business item moved to the end of the agenda. If someone could make that motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, so Nazir moved and who seconded? I'm sorry.
Tim.
Tim. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, same sign. All right, we've made that amendment to the agenda. So with that amendment to move that item to the end of the agenda, can we get approval, a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Thanks, Nazir.
Thank you.
I
Second.
second. Faith
Thank you,
second.
Faith. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, and we also had the minutes for the February 8th meeting sent out prior. So if we could get a motion to approve the meeting minutes, unless there are corrections.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I
All right,
second.
thanks, Nancy and Nazir for the second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Plugging right along. Okay, so public agenda. It looks like we didn't have any scheduled items. So are there any individuals present that did not request to speak on the public agenda that would like to address the DAB? Okay, not hearing any. We will go ahead and move to the next item. So we have next up updates, issues, and reports. So first up, we have the fire department report. Who's here for a fire department report? Nobody for the fire department. Okay. How about community police report?
There's two of us here, Officer Snyder and Officer Ditch. Ditch, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
You can go ahead.
Okay. I don't have much. I just got back into town. I've been on a 5-week hiatus out of state. So I just have some notes here from based on what everybody's kind of been telling me what's been going on. So this kind of covers the northeast part of DAB 2, where Ditch will probably talk about the southern part of DAB 2. So what I have real quick is we're seeing a lot more vehicle break-ins in regards to specific locations targeted. This is a little different than the ones we've seen in the past because these groups of suspects are actually breaking out the windows of various vehicles. They seem to be targeting places like Home Depot, the YMCA, some apartment complexes, and some other residential areas. And they're actually, like I said, breaking out the windows and actually taking items that they see and find, which is has been unusual because in the past they've just been pulling on the door handles and then taking what they could as an crime opportunity. So we have identified some possible suspects in regards to that, and we do have a special assignment set up on Tuesday and Thursday in some of the various areas to target those guys. So hopefully we can be able to nab a couple of these guys this week and put an end to that. Also seeing an increase in shoplifts in Northeast Wichita in regard to some of the bigger department stores like Home Depot and Dick's Sporting Goods and such. Seeing a lot of more big ticket items being taken again. So again, we've identified some of the suspects and are working towards putting a special assignment together on those to target some of those individuals and catch those. One of the recurring houses, 4340 North Linden. It's a house we've had a lot of recurring issues, a lot of drug activity out of the area. I've notified MABCD. They are aware of the issue and are working in getting some of the citations and stuff placed upon the address. Talked to some of the other supervisors within our Patrol North, and we're going to try to work about getting a search warrant on the property itself and see if we can hit them with maybe some drug offenses if we have enough probable cause to do so. The other major house that's been a recurring issue the last couple of months has been 3205 North Rushwood. Again, more drug activity. We discovered that the house is owned by a family, but the gentleman that should be living there, the son, has not been living there and has basically been kicked out by some other squatters. So there has been an eviction been put in place. So they have about, I think, as of now, probably 20 days to evict the property. If not, we'll move in and hopefully rectify that issue some other way. Lastly, the only thing I have is I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with the Wichita Police Foundation. I know Patrol North does a lot of things with random acts of kindness. But Becca Waldera, the head of that, is actually leaving the foundation. So we're hoping to maybe have somebody fill her spot. So if anybody knows anybody that can reach out and wants to fill that spot, please feel free. And we'd love to have that filled so we can continue to do those random acts of kindness and help other people and families around the area. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Officer Schneider. Officer Ditch, what do you have for us?
Hey, I'm Chad Ditch. I'm the 34 beat coordinator. I'm stepping in to help fill in for some guys that are off today. So basically the only thing I got, just to piggyback on what Ryan was saying, we do have some areas on the southern part of the DAB that are getting the larceny to autos, usually around like 2 a.m. to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And it's just the unsecured doors and everything. And still having those issues with people going out to warm up their cars and everything, and vehicles getting stolen during that time. So just encouraging people to, either get some kind of remote start or secure your valuables as much as possible. We're also at Patrol East doing a kids clothing drive. We're partnering with the community support specialists. And what we're doing was we're accepting donations for kids 10 and under, and we're looking for brand new underwear and socks, and then lightly used shoes and blankets. And we're accepting those donations at Patrol East at 350 South Edgemore, Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we're doing that. We started that March 1st, and we're doing that all the way to April 16th. So that's all I got.
All right. Does anybody on the advisory board have questions for our guests from the police department? Doesn't look like it. Thank you for being here, gentlemen. Appreciate your report. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Parks and Rec
Thanks, guys.
Department.
Hello. I'm John Sidwell. I'm the Center Director of Boston Rec Center in District 2. I'm also in charge of Hilltop and Goldenrod community facilities. As far as an update for Park and Rec, the Boston Splash Pad, I've been updated here recently that it's going into second phase and is operational. So there is hopes that it will be able to be usable and up and running by at some point this summer. Our spring classes, actually our winter classes are coming to an end, and our spring classes are starting March 22nd. Ever since the COVID, we've opted out of the printed guides, but this is our next first session back that we've elected to go ahead and go back to printing the guides so people can get that information at Dillon's. They can get it at any library, recreation center, city hall, and then go through all the classes. And it has classes for Park and Rec, City Arts, and the library all into one magazine called The Evolve. And then also looks like we may be running our Easter event at Watson Park this year. It would be March 27th. Still trying to work out all the changes that we need to do to kind of for this odd year. But we are looking to still offer the Easter event on March 27th.
Excellent. All right. Anybody have any questions for John? All right, John, thanks for being here. And I think next up we have Wichita Public Library report from Savannah Ball.
Hello, sorry, there's a car alarm going off here, buddy. I'm Savannah Ball. I'm the branch manager at the Rockwell Library. I did want to share that all Wichita Library locations have reopened for in-person service. That started today, Monday, March 8th. Our regular hours remain in effect. Right now, we are allowing customers to browse shelves for materials. Our public computers are available at most of our locations, and we continue to offer print copy and fax services inside most locations. Customers with mobile devices can use Wi-Fi at designated tables inside most of our locations. They can also use self-check stations for no contact borrowing and the locations that we have self-checks. Curbside service will still be available for ADA accommodation. We are offering virtual programs via Zoom, and those will be offered and do require registration. We will be doing test proctoring in a remote or virtual format. Book a Librarian technology help is available by appointment only at the Advanced Learning Library. And we do have some services that aren't available at this time, but we hope to reinstate in the near future. So our collaboration room and meeting rooms continue to be closed. We are continuing to not offer room rentals at this point. We are not accepting book donations and other material. We have removed a lot of our lounging furniture from our buildings just to prevent gatherings. And then the Friends of the Library used bookstore inside the Advanced Learning Library is still closed. So we hope to have more information on when those will be reinstated in the future, but you can always check our website and just look at more information about our current opening at wichitalibrary.org.
Excellent. Any questions for Savannah? That was a lot of information and it's exciting to No questions or feedback for Savannah?
You were frozen.
Oh, I'm sorry. So,
I thought she was just holding really still and quiet.
I do that with my staff sometimes. It's kind of funny. So what did you hear? Becky shared a link in the chat about the Park and Rec's activity guide. And if we don't have any other questions or feedback for Savannah, I would entertain a motion to receive and file all staff reports.
I have a quick question for Savannah, if that's all right.
Excellent. Sure.
Savannah, what's the status of the meeting room that we usually meet in for DAB meetings?
It's the same. So right now it's holding all of our lounge furniture, a lot of our tables that we've had to remove so that people can stay 6 feet apart, and all our quarantined check-in. So once we're able to move those out, then we should be able to open our meeting room back up.
Good question. So we're still virtual for the time being, it sounds like. And Becky also shared a link to the wichitalibrary.org website if you'd like to grab that from the chat. Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. So if we could get a motion to receive and file all staff reports, I'd appreciate that.
I so move.
Second.
All right, Faith. And who was the second? Nancy?
Nancy, yeah.
Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, looks like we're ready to move on to new business. And if you will forgive me here, when I printed out my agenda, I didn't get the next page, which is probably the most important. So I think we have John up again to give a presentation to us on the athletic court inventory and proposed CIP program. So John?
Yes. Okay, let me see if I can get it shared up for you. All right. For this year, the athletic court system capital improvement program, we currently have 177 total athletic court systems in Wichita, 71 of those being tennis courts, 40 basketball, 38 volleyball, sand volleyball, 19 outdoor pickleball courts, 3 tetherballs, 3 futsal's, 2 tennis practice balls, and 1 shuffleboard. Almost sounds like a Christmas song, doesn't it? And currently our athletic court CIP funding allows for $225,000 annually through this year to 2030. And then averages out to the under 17,000 per court. But many courts aren't going to need additional work, and some courts in poor condition need to be removed and replaced. Some of the sample costs of court improvements when you're putting in a post-tension futsal court with special goal material, as you can see, it's the higher end of $160,000. And it's kind of tearing down with the post-tension single tennis court or a double pickleball court, and then $70,000 for the post-tension basketball court, and $60,000 for concrete slab basketball court, and $10,000 to $15,000 each for the temporary crack repair. But as you can see here, it only lasts 1 to 2 years, so it's not cost efficient. Current court rehab needs, funding levels, and maintenance resources will not support installation of new court lighting at non-programmable courts. Our lighting systems must be of excellent quality to stand up to public use with minimal maintenance. And currently with the lighting systems that we have at Ralph Woltz Tennis Center and Striker have a 25-year maintenance plan with the vendor. And it's about $40,000 to $50,000 cost per court for quality lighting systems. Striker's lighting ended up being $1.5 million. Some recent changes that we've done to courts already in the city is the Harrison Tennis Futsal. The double tennis court was moved and replaced with post-tension tennis / futsal. At Harrison, basketball, post-tension basketball court was put in place. Then Sherwood Glen basketball, a half basketball court with pickleball striping for portable nets. Evergreen Park has had their tennis court modified for futsal. In the West Meadows Park, the asphalt cracks repaired and court resurfaced. But as I've said earlier, whenever you go to do those asphalt cracks, not really efficient, so it'll be monitored just to see what possible steps need to be taken. Current athletic court projects that are going on are a big one at the Ralph Woltz Riverside Tennis Center. 3 tennis courts replaced, 3 additional courts, 6 new pickleball courts, additional lighting in plaza area, and surfacing and striping in the spring. And $1.5 million CIP funding with a $400,000 grant. Currently under design, we have Osage Park, double tennis to be replaced with a single tennis and 2 pickleball courts. And at Spruce Park, basketball court to be removed and replaced. And at Piatt Park, basketball court to be removed and replaced. At Southview Park, double tennis court in poor conditioning to be removed and restored to green space based on our public survey results. Our court condition inventory is assessed annually by staff and assigned condition rankings based on their size and classifications of parks per the pros plan. Court material, whether it's asphalt or concrete, court cracking, and the amount of cracks that are present, crack size and severity, condition of nets and posts, condition of marking and striping, complaints from park patrons, and requests for new and other courts. Some of our additional assessment is our community engagement, like here are the district advisory board and city council presentations, public surveys as warranted, and local group input, such as the free play area parks versus programmable courts, and possible reduction of athletic court system to reflect current uses and ease maintenance resources. Here's the top 10 courts in the worst condition. Boston, the park that I run, has see at the top of the list here. So, yeah, we have Boston, Cessna, Columbine, Country Acres, Emory, Harvest, Murdoch, and Plainview on the basketball courts, and for our tennis, Country Acres and Sycamore. Our proposed 2021 program in 2021, we focused on replacing asphalt basketball courts with concrete courts and new backboards. And that picture right there is actually the Boston Park playground right there. That will be replaced. That's $225,000 in 2021 funding. Will accommodate 3 basketball courts. Those 3 set up for this year will be Boston, Harvest, and Plainview. While we're still assessing the Country Acres and Sycamore athletic courts. Then we have our expansion of programmable courts. There will be additional funding being requested for future CIP for tournament quality court systems. Ralph Walsh Tennis Center expansion should be complete by May. It will allow for larger tennis tournaments. Pickleball courts will be programmable. Edgemore has the 6 tennis and 6 pickleball, and McAdams have 6 adult courts and 2 youth courts. And all those could be rehabilitated to attract larger tournaments, which will increase revenue from tournament programming, will help offset maintenance costs. Are there any questions?
Okay, so I think that was a lot of information. Thank
Yes.
you, John. I appreciate that. And we did get those slides in advance. So I believe our agenda item is just to provide feedback. So any questions for John or any comments for feedback on the plan?
So I actually live in that neighborhood. So Boston Park is the closest park to us. And I agree with John. Our Boston Park is sorely in need of a brand new basketball court. And actually the tennis courts could use some love as well. Not to mention the sidewalks and the playground and yada, yada. But I would love to see maybe in the presentation for those of us that don't know where all those parks are, maybe like a map to show where all those parks with the improvements, what that looks like. We're all pretty familiar with the parks in our neighborhood, but maybe not where those parks fall in all the other neighborhoods. It just sometimes looks like, well, where are all these, who's getting the benefit of all of these parks? And it'd be really great to see like where it's dispersed and what that looks like.
Thanks, Faith. That's a really good suggestion. Do appreciate that. I do have a question. The grant funding that was mentioned, has that already been secured? Or is it a plan to apply for the grant funding?
I think it's already been secured. I can double check on that and just make sure. You're talking about the Ralph Walsh Tennis Center, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that's already been in place, and has basically provided to us with, I think, with some deliberate, instructions on how we can use it. And I can see what that is and get that information to you on that.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any feedback? Nancy?
I have more question of curiosity. So you mentioned that there's several pickleball courts that you're adding in. Is that something we're seeing in Wichita is an increase in pickleball play versus like tennis or even football?
Yeah, I mean, pickleball has actually been growing and growing nationwide. I mean, obviously to the point to where they're talking Olympic sports, being an Olympic sport. So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's expanded in our city. There's a lot of outdated courts that could be simply turned around and to where we can meet the need of the pickleball community along with also still trying to please the tennis community. I'm kind of like stuck between both. I enjoy doing both. So, as far as the pickleball needs, it's crazily growing, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon, really. But.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else have anything for John? Feedback that you'd like to give on the plan? It's kind of exciting to think about pickleball being an option. City should be able to get in on some of that's happening at paid locations. So that's awesome.
And if you want to know, I mean, I can give you more information on our plans for the public engagement portions. If you want me to kind of go over that a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Our objective is initially to like convey the financial realities and discuss the database scoring process in which we assess our courts and solicit feedback on our placement court types. Initially, you know, when the policy is adopted, I think we're trying to be candid about what the current CIP funding allows and show the data on when courts will be replaced at the current spending levels, provide estimates on when the district will see renovations at some of the local courts, provide a summary of public engagement that will take place prior to construction of replacement courts. And then once we go into our construction rollout, we plan on doing a visit and present, you know, and brief, you know, district advisory boards, place plastic yard signs next to existing courts with an appropriate message like your court is getting a makeover, you know, visit wichita.gov, or host an online survey through SurveyMonkey, which we would hope that we could get the district's community service representative Corey here to get them put in your guys' newsletter and also the district's Facebook page or on Nextdoor, so that way they can know about the survey. Then if resources allow it, maybe reach out to the neighborhood associations with the postcard and ask them to spread the information and the project about the project and survey. We also thought of hanging signs or posters with URL and QR codes nearby bus stops, libraries, and some public spaces about the project as well. So those are just a few of rolling plans or hopes that we are trying to do, because as we all know, the city of Wichita places a high value on the involvement and engagement of citizens, and we value that too. So we're going to try and be as, you know, engaging with the public as we can about it.
That sounds like a really robust plan for engaging the public. That's, I'm really pleased to hear that. Any other questions or feedback from members of the advisory board? Okay. Any, oh, go ahead. Who was that?
Yeah, sorry, this is Chris. Hey, I just have, and maybe it's really hard to track, but I was just curious, John, are you seeing, like, is the city seeing an increase in the use of parks due to COVID and kind of other entertainment options being closed? I mean, is the city, I guess, I don't know, tracking that in some way and trying to capture it all and take advantage of it so it doesn't go away before we can improve things?
You're muted, John.
Sorry about that. Well, we do a monthly attendance of what, you know, we see in our parks. I can tell you from mine, because I haven't seen, only time I ever see all the parks attendance combined together or at the end of the year where we have everybody's for 12 months there that I can see, but I can definitely look and see and with everyone else if they've seen an increase. I would say I've noticed an increase more in the afternoons just because some kids are out there during the afternoon because they don't have school that day. So I would say I've seen, especially during the school year, increase a lot during the afternoons. But I have seen a lot of, you know, congregation at the new playground here and also in the basketball courts. That's why it's really excited to get that basketball court replaced, because it usually has about 20 plus people out there. And it's kind of a sore thumb for a pretty decent tennis courts and like a new splash pad and a playground, you know, just to have that. But to simply answer your question, I've noticed an increase here at my rec center park. But as far as citywide, I couldn't answer that, but I could get some additional information if you'd like and report it to you.
And then if it's okay, I jump in. We also had our financial report for the last quarter of 2020 Tuesday, and we saw for the first time that our golf fund actually made money in District 3, in quarter 3 and quarter 4. So we were very excited about that. We anticipate it was, you know, it's speculation, but it was because of COVID, and it was one thing that people could get out and do. And we're hopeful that people saw that we have great courts, that we have great amenities, great courses and great amenities, and hopefully that trend will continue. So that's one tangible item that I can mention in Park and Rec.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great.
I'm fairly sure my family contributed to that because my husband is an avid golfer. So awesome. Anything else from the DAB for John before we open it up to the public to give an opportunity for those who are in attendance to provide feedback or ask questions? Nope. Anybody from the public? I think Bruce, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. John has a great presentation, and I may have missed this. I did observe that you go to great lengths to get feedback from the public. My question is, when it actually comes down to the decision making, who sets your priorities? Is it the park board or is it the staff?
I like that. As far as the priorities, as far as like what structures are being put in, or what exactly are you referencing?
Which court gets repaired first?
Gotcha. We go through the Park and Rec goes through a comprehensive inventory. It kind of acts as a tool when determining which courts are due for replacement. This tool kind of determines a score for each court based on the surface type, conditions, hazards, and complaints. So complaints, from the public are added in there as to what goes in there. Yeah, we do have a kind of like a inventory, a condition, what condition it's in, and we kind of go based off a scoring process is what we do. But I mean, obviously in anything you get enough community engaged into it, it sometimes forces you other routes. But
So then based on that score, the staff sets the priorities.
well, yes, so based off that criteria that's considered into the scoring, yes, we, as far as our parks department and forestry and them, they kind of dictate, what is scoring because they know the resources, they know what they have available to repair. So as far as, since they're in charge of those resources, knows what makes sense, we're taking in community engagement information as well and trying to make it all work on every end, whether it's budget items and, trying to make sure we're getting what people need out there.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So what I heard you say, John, is that the public input is factored into the final decisions. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is taken to the park board for just, and then to the district advisory boards, and then they'll go to council.
Then,
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for the additional clarification. Anybody else have anything for John? Thank you. I'm not sure that we need a motion. It was just an opportunity for us to give feedback to John. So I think that we are ready to move on to our first zoning case of the evening. Thanks, John. You're welcome to hang out with us if you want. Oh, no, he's already, peace out. He's already checked out. All right. So we have our first zoning case, and Philip, are you here to present that, or?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. Please.
I think
go
the
ahead.
one I'm going to start off with was a late addition to the agenda, and it's my fault for not getting information to Corey on time. This case was heard as CUP 2021-0002. It was heard at Planning Commission last Thursday on March 4th. If this case is not protested, it's actually not going to be going to council, but it's still good to get the district advisory board's input just in case. And so what it is a case for a new community unit plan. This one's a little different, a little unique in that community unit plans are required for commercial developments of 6 acres in size or larger. So any typical, so in this area, it's actually located at Kellogg and Rock on the northeast side. It includes the Denny's restaurant and the cash title loans property. It's kind of this long strip between the pump station for stormwater at Rock Road and the Super 8 Motel. If you think about the Eastgate Shopping Center across Kellogg to the south, that's a typical community unit plan type development where it's a large commercial development. This one is just about 2 acres, so it wasn't required to have one. And in addition, it's already zone limited commercial and it's not going to change its zoning. What the owner wants to do, as you can see on this map that Corey has in front of you, there's actually 5 separate lots, and they're all remnants from when Kellogg was expanded. They always used to expand much further south. And then a good chunk of them was taken for the freeway expansion. But it's kind of just disjointed with the fact that there's 2 owners, there's 5 separate lots. So what a community unit plan can do is it provides a way to have much more cohesive development across that whole property than the way it's set up right now. And so that's what they're looking at doing. It affords them the opportunity to have a little better control and advantage for signage along the Kellogg Freeway, which is one of the major things that they were looking at getting out of it. So what you have here is the Kellogg Drive Heather Community Unit Plan, because that's at Kellogg Drive and Heather Road. Again, it's already zone limited commercial. That is not changing. So any type of, they don't necessarily have any specific uses they're looking at, but anything that fits within the limited commercial zoning is permitted in here. It was one thing I would note, because it was a phone call from one of the residents in the Bonnie Brae neighborhood to the north, was they were concerned about a bar or a nightclub or something like that. And all of that would have to be done by conditional use. And so this isn't necessarily opening the door for something like that to come into play. That would have its own separate zoning action that would have to take place if something like that was going in. But you're probably looking at restaurants or retail, something like that you've been typically seeing along the Kellogg Freeway in this location. The plan is to take these 5 individual lots and actually create and really just minimize them down into 2 parcels, like one half being on the east side, one half being on the west side. So if you think of like the Denny's location and its parking, that's pretty much parcel 1. And then the cash loans, and then the farthest east area you have right next to Heather Road does not have a building on it right now. And that would be parcel 2. We did a lot of different negotiations back and forth with the applicant on this. There's some requirements in the CUP that if they were fully enforced on this, like the setbacks, would have been 35 feet pretty much on all sides of the property. It's a very shallow lot and would really diminish the developable space. And so we did give some leeway there. There's a 25-foot setback on the front along Kellogg, a 20-foot setback along the east property line on Heather, and then a 25-foot setback on the rear of the property, just to give them a little bit more developable space. We understand most of, the development issues on this property is because a good chunk of it no longer exists because it was taken for the freeway. Regarding signage, this would allow a total of 4 signs, 2 pole signs that are 60 feet in height, 1 per parcel, and then a 14-foot monument sign for each parcel as well. So a total of 4 signs. And then a total of 600 square feet of sign face. So the square footage of the sign, and they can distribute it amongst the 4 signs as they want. So typically you might see maybe 250 square feet of that on the big pole sign, the large one that's trying to attract the attention off of Kellogg. But we gave them the flexibility to figure out how much square footage they would want per sign. All of that is pretty much in line with the Wichita Sign Code. The 60-foot height is above and beyond what the sign code would normally permit on this. However, there are instances right at this location at Kellogg and Rock where we have allowed signs of that height based on its relationship to the highway. So directly across Kellogg to the South Eastgate Shopping Mall was just permitted to have 2 60-foot signs. If you go to the west across Rock Road, Town East Mall is allowed to have a 65-foot sign and a 60-foot sign along the Kellogg Freeway. So it's not something that's brand new to the area. It's something that you actually see the 60-foot signs at Eastgate are actually already constructed. So if you're looking at what does that look like, that's a good example of what a 60-foot sign looks like. So that was the kind of the leeway we were giving them on the signage is based on what is already kind of existing in the area. There's going to be standard parking requirements for the uses depending on what goes in there. There's going to be cross-lot access, so it's going to be a cohesive development. There's going to be a pedestrian plan that will connect the buildings to the sidewalks along Kellogg, the frontage road that is. There'll be 2 driveways that already exist on the property. The other thing that we really went back and forth on with the applicant and finally came to a final decision actually at the Planning Commission was about the screening and landscaping. The property along the rear along the rear line has a 6-foot fence, which does meet the screening requirement per the code. That's the minimum screening requirement. But right now you can see that it was most likely built by the individual property owners. It's like their backyard fence. So one thing in the CUP that we're requiring is that the owners of these properties are now responsible for the maintenance of that fence.
Daddy.
Hold on one minute. I have my daughter here. Boo, I'm in a meeting. Can you go out, please?
Don't you love Zoom meetings?
You want to meet her?
Absolutely.
No.
This is Cora. Hi, Cora.
Hi.
Hi, Cora.
Thanks for joining our meeting.
Does she work in city planning also?
She can tell you all about a whole lot of things. She's not even 3 and she's ridiculously smart. Oh, thanks for the aerial, Corey.
Yeah, thank you for the pictures.
Yeah, so the rear property line has a 6-foot fence on it, and now the commercial property owners here are going to be responsible for the maintenance of the 6-foot fence to kind of bring that up to the standard of the zoning code. Most likely these properties were zoned commercial before that screening requirement was in place, probably 30, 40 years ago. And so we're kind of bringing some things into compliance with the zoning code and putting the responsibility on the commercial properties now instead of the residential properties behind them. The other thing that's in there is at the time, and this was modified at the Planning Commission, so I'll just tell you what the final product is for the sake of time. At any time of new construction, so if a new building goes on or an addition is built onto a building, or an existing building has a remodel or renovation that equates to 50% of the value of the property or more, or affects 30% of the square footage of the building, if any one of those 3 conditions happens, it triggers the commercial property to have to build a 6-foot concrete wall. And it's parcel to parcel. So say if on this eastern side, if a new building is built right there at Kellogg and Heather, then that eastern parcel, which is about 300 feet, would build a wall. And that would be in place of the fence. And then if something were to happen on the west parcel, then that would happen at that time. So I'll run through those conditions again. New construction of a new building or addition, a remodel or renovation of existing structure that's equates to 50% of the value or more of the structure, or affects 30% of the square footage or more of the structure. So say, a new restaurant wants to come into Denny's and they do a complete overhaul of the interior, more than likely that would trigger the wall requirement to be built along the rear property line for a much more substantial screening wall versus the wooden fence that's there. The applicant has agreed to bring the rear portion of the property, really the whole property, up to the standards of the Wichita Landscape Ordinance, which again did not exist when these properties were initially zoned commercial. That would be 1 tree per 40 linear feet along the back, and these are big shade trees. It's also requiring parking lot screening, which is the bushes that kind of hide the fronts of cars, things of that nature. So we're kind of bringing some things up to par with what commercial development would be like now, with the instigation of this community unit plan at this location. The neighborhood around it, as you can see, the majority of it is commercial, other than the properties on the rear, and then you have the freeway frontage on the front. The property directly to the west there that you see on the left-hand side of the screen is that pump station for stormwater that makes sure, you know, the bridge under Kellogg and Rock does not flood when it rains. So, and again, the zoning is not changing, so the type of uses that have been there and could go in there can continue in the future. The comprehensive plan identifies this this area is eligible for or appropriate for a mix of new residential and commercial, which is kind of what we're seeing anyway. And even in the new residential, the location guidelines even say that depending on market factors and, you know, major streets and stuff like that, you might see pockets of commercial going up like we do on major intersections in residential neighborhoods. So we do feel that it meets the spirit and intent of the comprehensive plan. Overall, staff is recommending approval. It did go to Planning Commission on March 4th. It received an approval recommendation of 10-3, and it wasn't that 3 individuals were opposed to the community unit plan. 3 of the planning commissioners would have liked to seen the rear landscaping requirement be 1 tree every 30 feet instead of 1 tree every 40 feet. That was the only difference in the votes there. And so really everybody was in approval of that. The CUP is a good thing. It was just kind of a discrepancy on some people wanting a little bit more landscaping on the back than the majority of them. So it is now in its protest period. That goes until March 18th. If individuals within a 200-foot radius of the property were to submit a protest petition to the city clerk, then it would have to go to city council for final approval. If it does not get protested, then the planning commission's decision is final, and I can stand for any questions you have.
And I will just provide input that I have received no emails or correspondence from the community.
I will say I had 2 phone calls from individuals in the Bonnie Bray looking for a little clarification as to what it was going on. As I said, expressed concern of potential bar or nightclub or something like that. But really, other than that, nothing major.
Thank you, Sam. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Faith. I'm going to let Sam go if that's okay. This is his area, and then we'll have you ask your question.
Yeah, a couple of things really concern me. Of course, that is my neighborhood, and I've heard a couple of people, but the signage, some of these signs can be so annoying, so bright. And you know, there's 5 properties that back right to that, but yet there's a dozen on the other side of the street that these signs just light up. And, you know, some of these signs can be really annoying. And that, I guess that probably worries me as much as anything. And the other part, I hope this is successful, but I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years, and that stretch along Kellogg has never been very successful. Even a brand new Denny's couldn't make it. So I just hope something can go in there and they do well. But I am concerned about the 60-foot high signs, because some of them can, like I say, just be so bright and everything. That's it.
Thanks, Faith. I think you had a question or comment.
Sorry, forgot how to work the computer for a second. My question was really along the same lines as what he was saying. Further down the road, I have friends that live near those incredibly bright LED signs, and they are not great. 60 feet high LED signs will be extremely disruptive, especially if you live behind them. I don't know how that falls into the zoning. I don't know how that works. I'm just curious. I don't live in that neighborhood, but I live fairly close, not close enough to be disrupted by the signs, but I know LED signs on my side of the street further down can be quite disruptive. So I'm just curious from a zoning perspective, with not having that in their plan, is that something that can even be addressed?
I do know that there is the ability for individuals to report signs and their brightness. And I mean, really, they're supposed to be like I don't know the exact term, but a brightness level they need to be under, especially like when it's dark in the overnight hours and stuff like that. So I know there has been some successful times when the owners of signs have been told to turn them down, and they have because of complaints from the neighborhood. Let me dig into I do know that the sign code, and I don't have the specifics offhand, and I apologize, does address things related to like flashing and rotating and things of like nature of signs that would make them nuisances. To be clear, these are not billboard signs. They're not for advertising things that are quote unquote off-site, as we call them. These are on-site signs, and so they're only advertising businesses that would be in this stretch of commercial area on those sites. And so typically you don't find as many LED, like typically you find like the nuisance signs being the billboards. Not so much when you think of like the Eastgate Shopping Center, it's a sign, and yes, it's illuminated, but it's not something that's flashing and strobing and things like that.
Thank you for addressing that question, Nancy.
Yeah, I have a question more about the fences. As you mentioned that it currently meets the standard, and if it's a new building or renovated, then you may have to put up a concrete wall, but a 6-foot wood fence, I worry more about those homeowners and safety and security. And, you know, a 6-foot wood fence doesn't provide necessarily a whole lot, especially when you're in a busy area with a lot of through traffic. And so I don't know if there could be a recommendation that these properties go ahead and put up that fence. I know they don't legally or have to, but I just worry more about those property owners and their ability to have that security behind them when they're at these commercial businesses.
There is the possibility, if you guys do make a recommendation that differs from Planning Commission, it would go to City Council for final approval. Not to dissuade you from doing so. I mean, whatever has to happen with this case happens, but if you guys could make a recommendation to have the language of the CUP require the construction of the wall on the onset, not to have the 6-foot fence there that, within a certain amount of time after final approval, that the wall does need to be constructed.
Nazir?
Just a last comment on what he just mentioned. Philip, last few times we were told that we have to either approve or disapprove what's there, not necessarily to add language to it. I agree with what you're saying, but we were told that that's not our role here. Am I correct, Becky?
And Philip, I think I'm going to lean into you too, because you're much more the expert. That's my understanding, that we either approve or disapprove, but we can approve or disapprove with commentary, if that's probably not the right word, but with a recommendation.
Right.
Yeah.
What you guys provide is a recommendation, just like what the Planning Commission provides as a recommendation. Again, if the recommendations differ in what they would like to see, then it falls on the City Council to decipher between them and decide what should be the final decision. And so I think that's what Becky's getting at, is with the commentary of, well, we would, instead of allowing the 6-foot fence to be there until new construction happens, we would just rather have the wall be built. And that would be something that City Council then would have to take into consideration of, well, here's what Planning Commission recommended. They were okay with the 6-foot fence until new construction happened or a remodel. And the District Advisory Board wanted the wall on the offset. What do they want to deliberate and decide between?
So I think the action that we need to take would be either a motion to recommend the action as outlined in the staff report, or not recommend or concur with the staff recommendations and add comments for consideration. So what is the will of the group?
I agree with Nancy 100% on the wall. But, these property owners, that's one of the reasons I'm on this board. I really try to protect property owners. I think sometimes, we have great ideas and we forget about these people that have these homes and, whatever. The fence would be great. But the other section on down, just on the other side, there's hotels up there and there's drug stuff going on. And unfortunately, there's no wall there. I just, it's just almost crazy. This part's probably better than the other part that's east of it. But to me, the biggest thing is the lights. I think that could be just really that could really bother the neighborhood. That bothers me more than the fence. That's all I'm going to say.
So I think we need to, so we have several other zoning cases on today. So want to see if there's
Dee, I'll make a
anything-
motion then. I'll
Thank
make a
you,
motion
Faith.
that we not approve it and that we submit comments with changes.
So the motion would be to not approve the recommendations made in the staff report. Is that correct? And then we'll add comments.
If I could, to be clear, like if you're okay with, the basis of this is, are you okay with the CUP in this location or not? And so you can approve, meaning you're okay with the CUP case, and then add comments of this is how we want the CUP to be different, versus denying, which means you don't want the CUP at all, meaning it would have to just be left up to how it would have to be developed with the 5 different lots. Does that make sense?
So thank you for that clarification.
Right. So like if
with
you guys
that
are okay with
information,
the general thing, you are voting to approve it, but you can approve it just like the Planning Commission. They recommended approval, but they changed some of the language.
so Faith, do you
Changes.
want to, with that information, do you want to amend your motion? Or
I do
leave it?
with one more question for Philip. Do
Sure.
they normally have to have a much more clear proposal? Because from the ones I've seen the last year, they're much more clear. They have what they want to do already in place. This one seems very vague. They don't really know what they want to do. And they're just asking us to approve it with kind of, this is what we might want to do maybe in the future. What do you guys think? That might just be me.
By clear proposal, do you mean like they have uses in mind?
Yes.
It kind of depends on the case, in my experience, in my opinion. What we have here is one that the zoning is already in place and is not changing. And so they're looking to get some benefit from the CUP, which can come in the form of that signage and more cohesive development, which would potentially make this more of an attractive property to market, with the understanding that it would be uses already within the limited commercial zoning. We have had cases in the past where like it comes with a zone change and they have an idea in mind, but until somebody's actually, occupying a building, they may have an idea of, well, hey, we want to bring this type of business or this type of establishment to the area, but until something's in stone, you never know what the market could change. So
Okay, then I amend my motion, and I motion to approve as long as we can put our comments in.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the CUP. Make sure I use the right acronym. And what I think we want to do is to either have a second or make sure we are clear about the comments.
I guess I have a real problem. The more I'm thinking about this. The big thing about this whole CUP is the signage. And I think that's the biggest negative. I mean, if they're just going to market this because they can put 60-foot signs up there, I don't know. That's all.
Nazir?
Sam, if I believe the sign is 60 foot high, just like Caddy Corners, the Chipotle sign, they're not going to light your backyard if you live back there or anything like that. It's just that they want to be to have people who are driving on Kellogg to be able to see it. I don't know who's doing what, but I believe that's what they're looking for. And these signs are, you want to be able to read it, but I don't believe it'll get you much light 60 foot down to see. They're not directed lights or anything like that. I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Well,
if I lived in the neighborhood.
You don't live in the neighborhood. I've had people gripe because there's a billboard there. And if you put a sign out, there's no limits. I mean, yeah, they might have to turn it down. It might strobe. You know, I've gone by a church sign one time that about blinded me. It was strobing, you know, and, you know, you just don't know what they do. You know, you've opened it up. And 60 foot high is a long ways up there. It's going to it could light up the neighborhood.
Okay, so let's do this. We have a motion to approve the CUP as presented by staff. We don't have a second yet. So does anyone want to second for further discussion?
Can you clarify what our comments will have? I mean, are these just comments that will be just pure recommendations, or will they carry weight as we submit them?
Recommendations.
I believe they're just recommendations. So we need to either approve the CUP as is. We can choose not to recommend approval of the CUP. I believe that we can approve it and then provide comments for consideration. And Becky, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're here listening to the discussion. And if we do not recommend approval, it goes to City Council. Is that correct?
And I'm going to jump in and just the reminder that I can't weigh in either way, right? I can just provide comment clarity, but not persuade. I don't have a decision at this time, but there could be, just like with the MAPC made the recommendation that the trees, instead of being 40 feet or 30 feet, there could be the recommendation. And I got this comment from, because I just wanted to provide some clarity and make sure that I was giving good information, because CUPs are sometimes confusing, but there could be the recommendation from the DAB that the sign is turned. So it's not at a degree, so that it's not facing the neighborhood as much and more facing the highway, which would be the intention of what the developer would want anyway. It's also my understanding, Philip, that this isn't really a major change. It's just trying to clean up this area to almost kind of protect what can go in there in the future. Is that correct?
Right. The change, I mean, Mr. is correct that really one of the major changes requesting with the CUP is for the additional height on the sign. And so the rest of it is really to allow a cohesive development, which would potentially help with the future success of actually bringing new development or different tenants to this commercial strip, so it's not vacant anymore.
Okay, so we had a motion and we did not get a second. So we're back to needing a motion on this item.
I think Nazir seconded.
I'm sorry?
I think Nazir seconded. I thought I heard him say he seconded.
I'll second it with the recommendation of building the wall.
Okay, and do we want to add any additional comments about the lighting or the signage?
I don't.
I think, yeah, to me, that's the big problem. I think it's
So what do you
great
want?
to get
What would you like to
property.
recommend, Sam?
I don't know how, you know, when you put something like that, to me, that's They want to it's a marketing. What they're trying to do is market this piece of land, and I understand it. I want it to go to something, but just putting up a 60-foot light is one of the. To me, that's the marketing tool of this whole thing.
So what
And
is the
there's no limits.
recommendation?
I
That
take
it
off
be
the
turned?
lights.
Steve,
ask
do you
a
want to
quick-
take a stab? Sure.
Now, I just want to ask a quick question to Philip, might help. So if this was just left as however many 5 individual parcels and zoned LC, or 4, what's the, as far as the Wichita sign code, what would they be able to do versus putting this into one CUP? Because I know enough to be dangerous, but you're basically blending your square foot allowance, right? And working it into one deal to try to get more, but more square footage onto one sign, but then also the height. So could you kind of give us an idea of if those were left individual, what it would be and what they're allowed to do?
Yes, it
And I understand the
go
height
up
thing,
to-
but
right.
you could actually end up with a lot more signs if you just left it LC.
It could go up to, signs could go up to 35 feet. You could have one sign per lot, which would be 5. And the square footage is actually about the same. It would be broken up differently because the sign code affords 0.8 square feet of sign area per linear foot of frontage of what your lot is. So each lot would get an allotment of, you have 100 feet of frontage, you can have 100 square feet of signage. You have 75 feet of frontage, you can have 75 feet. And that's where I think what their main thing is like, instead of 5 different things all competing for, you know, and cluttering up, you know, with potentially 5 signs, you have 2 tall signs where you list, you know, these are all the tenants that are here. And, you know, with the proposal with a greater height to get better visibility from Kellogg. That's my understanding of what they're doing. So if it's left the way it is, you can have 35-foot signs. They would all have varying degrees of square footage based on what linear frontage they have. And yeah, you would potentially have more signs with smaller square footages on them, which, you know, from an economic point of view, my understanding is just kind of what's been hindering. I mean, the reason Eastgate across the highway went for taller signs that they had to get approval from through the planning department was for better visibility on Kellogg. They had 35-foot signs before, or maybe they were 40 feet, and they went up to 60 with the reasoning of better visibility to attract better tenants. You know, a store would want to locate there more because they're going to get the visibility off the freeway on the sign.
Was some of that conveyed due to Kellogg now going under Rock Road and therefore
Yeah.
people can't see anything?
Yes.
Okay, I have another problem, Philip. The signs, unfortunately, where that property is, Kellogg Drive in front of this property goes west only. So they're going to see this sign going on Kellogg. You can't even get to the properties. I mean, these signs are going to be, I hate to say it, useless. That's the worst thing. That's what's wrong with these properties not being able to go. Most people, you can't believe when I ride around my neighborhood on my bike with my dog, how many people are trying to get to those motels or they can't get to them. You know, they try to cut through the neighborhood and there's no streets going through. And these signage, you're going to see the sign, but you can't get there. It's
Okay,
wasted.
So I want to be mindful of the time, and we still have quite a
I
few
know.
things on our agenda. So we have a motion and we have a second. And I believe we have one comment to say that we want the wall installed now or before the development. And I'm hearing a lot of conversation around the signs. So do we want an additional comment
Definitely.
about the signs? What is it? What do you want it to say?
I
So
think
we can call the
number-
question.
Well, I think anybody, if you drive by this property, number one, these signs, I don't care if they're 100 foot high, when you see it, you can't get to these properties. They're wasted signs. I would say no higher than the normal. They need to be back to 30 foot, do whatever they need to do. But I don't care how high the sign is, people aren't going to be able to get to the property.
Okay,
So
so
I think, you know, the normal height of the signs is what I'd recommend. I wouldn't.
Per the sign code.
Yes, I think the property thing is fine. I hope something comes in there, but the sign's not going to help. Everybody needs to drive there and then try to get to one of those locations.
okay, so
Just as a quick reminder here, and again, I'm just providing hopefully some clarity. There's a motion and a second. We'll call the question for the vote. The vote will be right now to approve, and then recommendations can be added,
Can be
just like the MAPC. So
Thank
just,
you.
yep, just want to make sure. So right now
Yep.
there is a motion to approve the staff's recommendation, and then staff will coordinate with the applicant to let them know the recommendations of MAPC and the District Advisory Board. And Philip, always correct me if I'm wrong.
So I'm going to go ahead and call the question. So we have a motion and a second. We've had lots of discussion. So all those in favor of approving the CUP, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Sam, you got to come off audio and.
Yeah, I oppose it because
Okay.
these recommendations are just, unfortunately, all these are recommendations, but
So
it's
Corey,
always
do
on
you
the
have?
sign is the only reason. If it's not a big deal, I mean,
I appreciate that. So Corey, do you have the vote recorded? We have one opposed, and I believe the rest were,
I have an
I didn't-
810.
okay. All right, thank you. Now, we want to make sure that we get the recommendations on record. So the recommendations, I think Nancy, you had made a recommendation that the wall be built or installed prior to any
If I
additional
might-
development.
Right. If I might add, we usually put stipulations in that as it would have to be built basically at the time of building permits, like when they pull a building permit,
Okay,
they would need to construct the wall. That's typical
okay.
language that we find. If you're-
Does that sound reasonable? Nancy, does that get to your
Does
issue?
that include the existing buildings on the site?
No,
Okay, so it doesn't really solve the issue with all of it.
but if it's kind of it's totally up to you guys. You could put a time frame on there, but generally what we see these as is it's in this condition right now. But if any additional commercial development were to happen, then the entire wall requirement would have to be met.
And it's a recommendation. So right now, if nothing goes in there, it's going to be just like it is now.
Right.
Right. Right.
But if one of them changes, then the entire wall has to be built.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the recommendations are
Okay.
accepted.
Sam-
And then the other issue is the sign. So Sam, the recommendation with regard to the sign is that they remain in compliance with the current code, or no higher than, I'm not sure what the right terminology is. So I'm kind of looking at you, Philip.
If you just say they're in compliance with the sign code.
Okay,
I
what
think that's the only
for
thing.
is something in
okay.
addition to what the sign code permits.
All right, so that's what our other recommendation will be. In any other recommendations on this one, because we got two more.
So
Okay,
do we vote on the recommendations, or is that just
I
any
think that's
DAB
just part of the
member
report.
item?
We don't vote on the recommendations. It's just like with the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, just recommendations.
Comment, okay.
Yeah, so with MAPC, I think it was a 10-3, and then the recommendation of the foliage, the trees. And so we'll make the recommendation that it passes 8-1. We will approve 8-1 with 2 recommendations.
And this goes in the official memo that I'll send to Philip that then goes into the council agenda packet.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, are we good to move on? Can we call that one done? Let's put a pin in that one and move on. All right.
The next two have not gone to planning commission yet. So you guys are hearing them first. The first one I'll go over is Con 2021-07. The applicant is requesting two things. One is an amendment to a protective overlay, which is basically additional rules that are applied to a zoning lot that provide additional regulations in and above the zoning code. And they're looking for a conditional use to permit a car wash on a property that's zone limited commercial located at Webb and Lincoln. So if you're familiar with the area, Lincoln dead ends into Webb, just south of the turnpike.
Corey, could you screen share the documents for this? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, coming up.
And there's a
That's okay,
laundromat
thanks.
right there. If you're familiar with that laundromat, there's an EMS station as well. This is actually going in front of the EMS station north of the laundromat. The protective overlay that prohibited the car wash was put in place in 2004 when the property was zoned from neighborhood retail up to limited commercial. So in neighborhood retail, you wouldn't have been able to do a car wash at all anyway, based on the zoning. And so when it got up zoned to limited commercial, they provided a protective overlay that listed a number of uses that are in limited commercial that they didn't want to be available on the property. So we have to amend that language in the protective overlay to take that verbiage out to allow a car wash. The conditional use is required because it's within 200 feet of residential zoning. There's residential zoning on the north, which is a church. There's residential to the west, which is, it's zoned 2-family, but it's single family homes. And then Kitty Corner Northwest across the intersection is zoned multifamily and has apartment complexes. And so that's where the conditional use comes in. There's a site plan that they showed that showed access would be off of, this says South Webb Road where that black arrow is. It's really just like an access easement. It's not Lincoln. Lincoln does not extend east in Webb. It's an access easement to get to the EMS station. It would be off of there where the light is. They would go through the car wash to the south and then they would exit onto Webb Road. There is another case going through that would permit another driveway onto Webb Road, and it was determined by traffic engineering that should be a right in, right out only. So it would not allow left-hand turns. If people wanted to make a left onto Webb, they would have to go back to the light and make a protected left turn there instead, just for safety reasons. The surrounding area, as I just mentioned before, is some residential. The little pod area with those larger lots that you see where this is at, that's all commercial. There's an EMS station and the laundromat. Staff is recommending approval of this. The site, according to the comprehensive plan, is identified as applicable for commercial development. Our recommendation of approval has several conditions. If you want to go to page 3, Corey, we can just show the recommendations so they can see them. Here you go, right there. That the site plan that they have is revised to show the driveways and the required screening and landscaping that conform to the landscape ordinance, which is the landscape buffer on the north side because of the residential zoning, and it would also need parking lot screening along Webb Road. It would also have to comply with the supplemental use regulations found in section 3D6F, which govern car washes in the zoning code. It would also have to comply with the screening requirements in the zoning code, and the landscape requirements in the ordinance. It'd have to be developed in conformance to the site plan. And if, it is fine to be in violation of any of these, the zoning administrator can conclude that the conditional use is null and void. I will say that the type of car wash that they are asking for is one of the ones that you drive through, like you get on a conveyor belt and it takes you through and kind of does it all for you. I did have one phone call from a resident asking that very question of whether it was a self-service car wash or more of a conveyor belt one, and they were okay with the conveyor belt one and happy that it was not going to be a self-service one. This one is going to Planning Commission on March 18th, so next Thursday, a week from Thursday, I should say. And I can stand for any questions that you might have.
And I have received no public feedback.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns?
Philip,
Tim,
this
are
is
you
Tim
on?
Johnson. I've got a couple of questions or observations. Philip, would you clarify for me that there would be an exit from the north side of this property onto that access easement that goes back to the EMS station in order for people to leave this car wash and then be able to turn left at the Lincoln Street light to go south? Is that a correct understanding?
That is correct. Corey, if you want to scroll down, there's a site plan towards the bottom. It might be the very last page.
Did I miss that? I apologize. I should.
No, you're okay. We can go over it. It's a really good question, really good clarification. There you go. So the access easement you see on the top side, they would drive in from Webb pretty much all the way to the back of the property and come in right at the lot line there. You can see the arrow showing the circulation. Like I said, this needs to be revised where the access off of Webb that you see in the bottom left-hand corner would have to show that it's just a ride in, ride out only. But there is the circulation way through the vacuum area, but they'd also be able to make their way back up to that access easement in order to get to the light to make a left-hand turn.
Okay, thank you. Another observation based on my own personal experience. I find it interesting that at least in your comments, nobody brought up the noise that these car washes that are drive-through with the blow dryers have. Will this have a blow dryer?
That is my understanding. I did see Kirk Miller online. He's the agent for the applicant for this case. Specific design questions, I would probably defer to him. My understanding of it just being kind of a drive-through one, like the typical ones there are, usually have a blow dryer.
They are, and the reason I bring it up, I'm not going to oppose this, but I am gonna note that I live in Willow Bend, and there's a Zips car wash on 37th Street. I live 500 to 1,000 feet north of that, and sit on my deck listening to the music that is that blow dryer drying cars whenever it's open for business. And again, I'm not going to oppose this, but it's something that I wanted you as a planner to know about next time one of these things comes up near a residential area.
I mean, something that we took into consideration is Webb Road right here, just south of Kellogg. This was information I got from Public Works and Utilities, and when they were looking at that access point that was requested on Webb, is that it experiences about 20,000 cars a day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of already noisy anyway.
It is.
It's with the vehicular traffic, so maybe that will help deaden some of that blow dryer noise from the nearby residences.
I think it probably will create a bit of a sound barrier in its own right, but I did see that you're just a couple.
I do appreciate your comments, though.
Mr. Miller.
Comments.
Yeah, Mr. Miller, did you want to address the comment or the question since you're on?
Sure, I think they do have a blow dryer in it, but you also have the EMS station between the residential and the car wash. So you have that as a buffer also. It'll deflect some of the noise.
Well, maybe it'll be white noise. Maybe we can think about that as white noise.
Like Coke-A-Rena when something good's really happening.
And there is one more thing that I found out about late Friday, which I don't know if Philip can address this. They want to put a purple roof on the building. Is that an issue, Philip?
I can look at the protective overlay. I don't think it had architectural controls.
It does.
It does?
Yeah, they brought it up during the development review, the first one they did. And I think they were kind of told, yeah, that's fine, but it does address colors and materials.
It should say, it says that vivid colors need to be limited to incidental accents and must employ similar to, there should be predominantly earth tone with vivid colors limited to incidental accents. So I would say based on that, they wouldn't be able to put a purple roof on it if it were up to my review.
So Phil, will it be the same thing, Philip, where we would either pass or not pass based on staff's recommendation with?
Well, that was not part of the initial request, so it was not looked at even from staff. Like we looked to amend the protective overlay to allow the use and not to amend the protective overlay to change the architectural controls. If they want to do that, that's opening a can of worms on what was legally advertised versus not. Because if it's not legally advertised that they're changing architectural controls, then we've got a bigger problem that would have to be not problem, but the case would have to look to be re-advertised, because you can't advertise for one thing and expect people to be coming to one thing and then I'll say, oh, now we want to amend it for another reason.
I'll tell them
right
no.
now, okay, so right now we're just approving the staff
Car wash.
recommendations
Yes.
for the car wash. And if they want to pursue a purple roof, they have to come back.
That's a different.
Okay.
Okay.
All
That
right,
works.
different deal. All right, so I need a motion on this particular case to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank
will
you, Nazir.
second.
Tim, second. Thank you. All, any further discussion?
Yeah, sorry,
all the- Oh,
I
go
may have
ahead,
missed my
Chris.
chance, but can you clarify the access easement is or is not for car wash traffic?
It is.
Yes, they will be using it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. And we have one more, Philip.
One more, and this one should be relatively quick and painless.
Promises, promises.
I am presenting this one on behalf of Matt Williams. He is a case planner on this, but sometimes we have to play dab bingo. Since I had two of the cases, I was just that nice guy, right? Anyway, the applicant is requesting the rezoning of a lot in the Hampton Acres edition from single family residential to MF 29 multifamily residential. This property is located on the south side of East Harry, about a quarter mile west of Webb Road.
Can you share that, Corey? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll kind of hang on for a second until he gets that pulled up here. There's your vicinity map. The site is currently zoned single family residential, like I said, and has a single family home on it. The applicant intends to remove the existing single family home and redevelop the site with 3 multifamily buildings. 2 of the buildings will be 8plexes and 1 of the buildings will be a 4plex. Properties north of the subject property is zoned neighborhood retail. So those are the properties along East Harry. So that's more commercial-like development. And has 2 retail buildings. Properties southeast and west of the subject property, so pretty much surrounding it, is zoned MF 29 multifamily residential, which is the zoning request that the applicant is looking for. So really, they're the oddball zoning in the area, and they're looking to zone it with the multifamily that's around it to build multifamily. Staff is recommending approval. The comprehensive plan identifies the property as appropriate for residential, which permits the wide variety of residential densities that would be in a municipality of our size. Really, the character of the neighborhood would suggest that it's a good economic move. There's already the established multifamily in the area, so it's not a new use. And I will leave it at that and stand for any questions.
All right. Anybody have any questions or
We had any
comments?
community input on this particular development?
I don't know. I did not hear anything specifically from Matt. this case is not going to Planning Commission until April 8th. So it's coming to DAB here in March. With some of the cases, I think this one actually got deferred to the April 8th meeting. There was something that needed to change, and so they had to delay its Planning Commission, but we decided to keep it on the March DAB since it was already scheduled to be here. Like I said, in preparation for this, when Matt and I were talking over the case, he did not indicate that he heard anything from the surrounding area or any properties or owners around there about this.
And I've received no community input.
Philip,
Philip, is
remind
this
me
a-
of the size of the lot, please.
The size of the lot is 0.84 acres, so just under an acre.
And they're looking to do how many doors?
They would have 2 8-plexes and 1 4-plex, so a total of 20.
20. Okay.
And MF29 effectively gets you about 29 dwelling units an acre. So they're probably building, I haven't done the math right offhand here, but they're probably maxing out the density that's allowed on the size of property that they have.
And there's enough area for parking and that kind of stuff.
It would have to be, yeah, there was nothing in here of asking for a reduction in parking, so they have to meet the parking requirement for whatever type of, and for multifamily, it's based on whether it's a 1-bedroom or deficiency, that's 1.25 spaces per bedroom. If it's a 2-bedroom or more, it's 1.75 spaces. A site plan is not required, but that's on them to make sure that if they don't have enough space to do the parking, and did not ask for a parking reduction, then they have to lower their density in order to be able to provide adequate parking.
I looked at
Steve. Oh, I'm sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I looked at this and I tried to figure out like how much multifamily. So when we get over into the multifamily, are we talking about multiple duplexes, which is seem to be a theme around here, or are we talking about a complex of some sort?
So there would be 3 buildings, 1 or 2 of them would have 8 units apiece, and then 1 would have 4 units.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
I mean, when you think about, I don't know offhand, but when you think about the large apartment complex, really on almost 3 sides, you have to the west and to the south, and then there's even the one directly east of it. It's probably very akin to what the development is like on the surrounding properties.
That's what I was going to say. Directly to the east, I just was there recently. My daughter is moving out. Those are all studios and 1-bedrooms directly to the east, sharing that property line and that parking lot. So that is not outside of what those residences would probably be. That's actually very in line with what all of those complexes are. So I don't know if somebody already made a motion, but
No, I think Steve, it looked like Steve had unmuted, and so I didn't know if you had a comment. Okay. And
No,
Tim's unmuted
I'm
too.
good. I'm good.
Did you have anything, Tim?
No, I'm just waiting to. for a
Okay, so Faith is going to make a motion, and then you guys can jump in and second it.
I'll second.
All right.
Well, how about we have a motion first?
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
thought we
Oh,
had-
okay. Well, then I motion to approve.
Okay.
Now I'll
And-
second.
Sam is seconded. So any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign.
Aye.
Okay, Tracy is opposed, so you got that count, Corey? Okay. All right, so I think we have,
The zoning cases are done, so
okay, all right, thanks, Philip. Appreciate your sticking it out with us and being patient with all of our questions. All
anytime.
right, so now we have places for people presentation. So Mary, I think
Yes, good evening.
that's you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mary Hunt. I'm a principal planner in the planning department. And thank you very much for letting me come in tonight to talk about places for people. So the first thing I'll ask is, can you see my screen? Anybody?
Yes, I think, yep, I think we can.
Is that a go?
Yep.
All right, well, thank you. Places for People has been in the works for some time now. And what I'm going to do is take you through a couple of the implementation steps that we have. One is on zoning, one is on land bank. There is a third one, and that'll come to you later this spring. That has to do with the financial side and the incentives and things like that. So here we go. Oops, okay, let's see here. It's not advancing, I'm so sorry. Oh, there it is. All right. So right now we are in the public engagement process, and we're going to talk about zoning first, but the process is the same. In mid-February, we had a Facebook town hall just about the land bank. And then a week later, we had the same kind of Facebook town hall on zoning. And recordings of that are on our website if anyone is interested in seeing that. But you're going to see basically the presentation we gave those nights. Moving forward right now, this month, we're talking to district advisory boards as well as some other organizations like WABA and our Bike Ped group and the Transit Advisory Group and people that invite us in. And so going forward, we're hoping sometime this spring we can take this to the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council. But during this entire period, we're taking public comment. And that's what I'm asking from you tonight is simply comment on, do you think we're on the right track with these things? Or do you think there are things that we're simply proposing that might trip us up, or you think might not be in the best interests of the community? So any comments or questions that come after tonight, should you think of something later on, feel free to email us at planning@wichita.gov. We've got our website at wichita.gov/places for people. We got a phone number, we've got an address if you want to drop a note. We're looking to take comment there. The one on the website, of course, has a what they call smart sheet, and you can just start typing in comments and questions, and we'll get back to you on that. Anyway, so the purpose tonight, like I said, it's just input, questions, kind of like how does this appeal to you? And my job tonight is really to the information that I can and the process that this will all take. So we'll kind of break tonight up a little bit on background, how we got here. We'll talk about zoning, we'll talk about land bank, and of course the next steps. So the background, we'll get started with our comprehensive plan. That's at the top of this little chart. That's the community investment plan. It was adopted in 2016, and in it, it called for an urban strategy, and that initiative created the Wichita Places for People plan. And out of that plan came several recommendations. We chose to tackle these three at this time. One is on zoning, one is on land bank, and like I said, later this spring, we'll be talking to you about incentives and possibly a pilot study on one of the nodes, one or two maybe. And the community investment plan is very infrastructure focused, transportation, water, all of that sort of thing. But it did create this urban infill strategy, and it set the boundary, and the boundary is very general, okay? It's not a hard boundary. It's called the established central area, and it is about half of our city. That whole, that plan was a 4-year process. It had a very large citizen steering committee, lots of surveys, lots of meetings and events and such. And some of the community trends that are influencing us and kind of driving us is we've got an era of fiscal constraint. I remember the guy in Parks was talking about that they face that too. We know we're going to go forward with slightly smaller household sizes, more diversity within our community, and that our citizens are living longer, so we have more older adults. They also have a preference for more transportation options, and like a lot of cities, we are competing for talent. So here's the urban infill strategy. It was set up so that we could attempt to reverse patterns of abandonment and decline, reduce the growth pressures on the outer edges, be more efficient with our land use as well as our infrastructure, and improve the quality of life in those places that are experiencing abandonment. And here's a map of the established central area. And like I said, it's about half of our population, about half of our land mass, but it has about 2/3 of all our jobs. So we're going 29th Street on the north, 31st Street on the south, Ridge on the west, and Rock Road on the east. So you're looking at this, I imagine you're saying, well, that's not much of District 2. And you're right, it's not. Because I know District 2 ends at Woodlawn, which is just, just west of Rock Road. But for those districts, and I think District 5 falls into this too, there's not a lot of direct impact on people living in these districts. However, there is an indirect drain when part of the city isn't being, it's not as efficient as it could be, because we all pay for water service, pay for infrastructure and the repair and replacement of that. So if the core is healthy and the outer areas are healthy, then the whole city is healthy. So the vision on Places for People was strong neighborhoods, vibrant centers, and a strong economy. And we wanted to do that through infill reinvestment, having walkable neighborhoods. I said this before, multimodal transportation, so you can bike, you can walk, you have access to transit as well as the automobile, and also building in housing options. Now here's the established central area again. This is a map showing the purple areas. The purple areas are the stronger areas. They are thriving, they are solid, they are stable areas. And then you have the kind of the peach areas or the gold areas. They're the ones that struggle a little bit. So, I mean, it's a good picture and a not so good picture. The little circles that are everywhere are where our consulting team noted all of the locations where the nodal development pattern could occur at various scales. And we'll talk a lot about that when we later on this spring when we get to the incentive side of this story. So Places for People, we had an advisory committee and such, and had lots of public meetings back in the day when we could meet in public. And we had a visual preference survey that went very well. So we've come up with zoning recommendations, land bank recommendations, and then the strategic investment strategy that'll come a little later this spring. And so, any questions on how we got to this point? I'm happy to just keep going if you want me to.
I have a question, and I'll say this is just my ignorance. When you say land bank, what is that?
Well, I'm going to talk about land bank.
Okay.
Okay, it's one of the implementation points that we're going to talk about tonight. First, I'm going to talk about zoning, and then I'll talk about how we want to establish a land bank. So, okay, so here are some proposed changes that we have. Zoning, what does it do? You guys deal with this every time you meet, and that's about regulating land uses. But it also incorporates when you change a zoning category for someone, certain rights go to that landowner once that zoning category has changed. And again, it happens whenever the property owner and the governing body agree, yes, we're going to change this together. And zoning, of course, is administered by local government. Might be the city, might be the county. In the case of our department, we administer zoning for the city and all the unincorporated property in this county. So the benefits, we want to enhance walkability. We want to increase housing choices and opportunities for people. This is an important point because it allows people that have lived in a neighborhood for a long time, it allows them to age in place. So they like their neighborhood, they like the grocery store that's right by them, they like, you know, the hardware store or whatever, and they like their church. And just because they got older, or maybe they're young and their family got a little bit bigger, now they have to move out of the neighborhood that they really like. So that's what housing choices do. It allows people to stay generally in the same neighborhood because there's a variety of housing types. And we do all this understanding that you get into the 1960s, say, you know, 65 to the late 60s. And after that, the development pattern really changes, okay? It's not post 1960, it should say post 1960s. And we go before that time, we have really different kind of physical differences in how development is done. And today we have a zoning code that is really great at administering all of that post 60s type development. And so what we're looking here too is to help with the efficient use of our infrastructure and all the community resources like parks and such. So the first thing, well, not the first thing, but the four things we're going to attempt at this juncture in the zoning is accessory apartments, duplex development in the single family 5 zoning district, single family dwellings on compact lots, and then townhomes and multi-unit. So you can see this is residential development, and it's kind of at the small scale. It's not massive 1,000 apartment complexes. We're not approaching that. Now, we have a draft proposal on this. It's located on our website that anybody can take a look at. And it kind of starts going into a lot of the details. So zoning, how are we going to do this? It's focused on the established central area only, and it would be done through an overlay. What's interesting about this is that the overlay is an option. The regular zoning regulations that, like you were just discussing tonight on these cases, that is still available to people, or they can opt for this new overlay zone. So we're not replacing anything. We're simply offering an option within this area. We've also developed some design standards that we believe reflect the neighborhood character. A lot of that was based on that visual preference survey we did when we did the urban infill project. And we're attempting to shorten that approval process from maybe around 75 days down to about 3 weeks. Okay, so the first thing, accessory apartments. They're also called accessory dwelling units, but in our code, it's called an accessory apartment. It is a dwelling unit. It is not simply an accessory structure in the backyard. It is a dwelling unit. It has to be separate from the main home, and they do share utilities. And we got a couple pictures here. One is a single story or a story and a half on the backyard, adjacent to an alley perhaps. The other one is how you can have accessory units on the upstairs of a garage. And the benefits here, and I'll tell you, these benefits will repeat, so I'm not gonna repeat them each time. But what this does and what all the other zoning things I'm talking about tonight are responding to interest in in housing options within the ECA. We want compatible designs. It reduces regulatory hurdles, which then the idea is that it would encourage revitalization. It increases the supply of housing in a walkable neighborhood. Again, efficient use of land and infrastructure that we all pay for. So here's some examples. The one on the left, the blue one, that's a 2-story accessory structure. The other 2 are apartments above a garage. Here's some others. This one on the right, that's a kind of has a modern vibe, but that could still fit into some of our neighborhoods because of the kind of materials that are used and the finishes on the outside. Again, here's another one where it's like a little 2-story. But we want architectural style and materials that are similar and compatible, not just with the house, but with the neighborhood. The max square footage for one of these units would be 75% of the footprint of the main house. And then the max height is 60% of what's allowed in the zoning district. So typically that's 35 feet. 60% of that would be 21 feet. This is so you don't have a 3-story structure looking over homes that only have 1 floor. Okay, and so we have addressed things like roofing and siding and where the HVAC has to be and where the doors face and things like that. And in our research, of course, we looked at lots of other cities, but these are cities that are doing this idea of offering a more streamlined approval process to accessory apartments in their communities. Now, the second type of development would be the duplex. And right now, if you want a duplex, you'd have to rezone your property to TF3. The idea here is that we would be doing it in an SF5 district, and they could keep their SF5 district, their single family district, but that the duplex would be allowed there. And so, of course, what's a duplex? It's 2 connected units, but they have separate utilities. Again, the reasons are the same: responding to housing options, compatible designs, etc. And this is the same for everyone, so I'm not going to repeat it. But here are some examples. The one on the lower left, this is a duplex where they've stacked the units one on top of the other, whereas the one in the middle, they're side by side. So either one qualifies as a duplex. The one on the upper right, that's one that's located on a corner, okay? So it has 2 streets. And in this case, our standards would be if you're on a corner that you have the entrance to one comes off one street and the entrance to the other comes off the other street, so that when you're driving or walking down or biking down this street, whichever direction you're going, it really has the look of a single family home. And so it's blending in, even though it's got 2 dwelling units. And the one on the bottom, although that, I don't know that a lot of this would be used in the ECA, but on those outer edges, because I live off Woodlawn and I live in a ranch house, and there's a lot of, and even things to the east of me, where they're single story homes or a story and a half. This would fit in with that. And instead of some of these other, old things that were built maybe in the 1930s or have that look. So on the duplex, the minimum size would be 2,500 square feet per unit, which means 5,000 square foot per building. And that is the minimum size for an SF5 lot. And of course, the design standards would apply. And you can see a more traditional one on the upper photo, and then a little more modern vibe on the one below. And here are some of the design standards. Garages extend no more forward than the front wall line. And the garages are not more than 50% of the ground level facade. And it is the ground level. Even if like these 2 top pictures, they both have glass upstairs, that doesn't count. It's 50% of the ground level facade. Corner lots have the entrance from the opposite streets. The front door then becomes the prominent feature on the front. And if somebody comes in and they've happened to have acquired several lots and they want to do several, like, 4 buildings or 5 buildings, and they've got, 8 or 10 units, they need to have some design variety going down the street, so it doesn't look like an apartment complex. Again, roof siding, HVAC controls are in place. And here are some other communities that have done this, where they permit duplexes in their single family zoning district. Okay. The third type, and this type would be used less often, and that is that we want to make a way for people to build a home on a lot that is slightly less than the 5,000 square foot minimum. We have not a lot of that here, but we do have some. And what happens is somebody ends up with not a 50-foot wide lot, but a 45-foot wide lot or a 40-foot wide lot. I mean, there's a limit to how narrow you can go, of course, but they're slightly less than 50 feet. And so we wanted to make an accommodation on that type of house. Again, we want to reduce the obstacles for somebody trying to make use of a lot. Again, the same things, housing options and such. Okay, the minimum lot size would be 3,000 square feet. This might be a lot that simply doesn't go back the full amount. The typical lot in Wichita is 50 by 140 feet deep in the older areas of town. And so maybe it's not quite that deep and it just doesn't meet the minimum square footage for a lot, even though you could certainly fit a house on that lot. So again, we're trying to make things just a little more flexible for people. We'd have one off-street parking space would be required if there is no on-street parking available. And again, other design standards would be in place. And here they are. Garage would extend no more than 5 feet in front of the front wall. So before they had to be flush or recessed from the front wall of the main house. Here they could peek out a little bit at 5 feet. Garage is no more than 50%, front doors are prominent, etc. And again, here are some other communities that are addressing this compact lot issue. And then our last category is our townhome multi-unit building. Again, always on a small scale. Now I know if you guys have been along Hillside and have seen this one, it's probably on the large end of what we're talking about here, but it is something new that did some infill development. That's right off, it's just east of Hillside and Douglas. But it's a situation where you have these shared walls between several buildings. Again, here are the benefits. What we'd have here is a maximum density of 4 units per the standard parcel, and the maximum height of 35, which is approximately 3 stories if you truly did go up that high, and then the design requirements. Garage is no more than 50%. The garage door is equal or recessed from the front door. Again, front doors are prominent. We want some development variety if somebody's building several at a time, and just like our others. And again, other communities that are doing this. There's a lot of this stuff at the bottom here, this picture at the bottom, there's a lot of that in Overland Park right now. That's relatively new. Okay, so that's kind of the design and the types of things, housing we're talking about, and kind of what things can look like and how they sit on a site. But the other part is the process. What is the process? Now you guys, Matt and Philip, they come here all the time and present a zoning case, and so you're kind of familiar with that whole process. But here what we have, this is the current thing. Somebody comes in the door, an application, public notices are given, they're scheduled at a planning commission, they come to a DAB, and then it moves on to the city council. It might get kicked back to the planning commission if the council has some concerns with it, okay? But let's just assume that it is approved by the council and the ordinance is published, and they start working with the folks in the building and construction, and away they go. And that takes about 75 days. So what we have here are alternatives. And this is something we'd like your input on. We're hoping to go with maybe one or the other of these, or something in between. But the alternative would be, one could be by right, where let's say we have a single family, an SF5 lot, somebody wants to build an accessory dwelling unit. They meet all of our requirements, and I mean all of them. And they simply get the okay, we approve it, we just approve it in the office, and away they go to the building and construction, and they get to build their accessory dwelling unit, or to build their duplex, or they get to build their compact lot. And what this does is it really, it shrinks that approval time down to just a matter of weeks. We're thinking maximum 3 weeks, okay? The other one is an administrative approval, and I'll go through that. So here's by right. They start with their construction permit application. Do they meet the guidelines? Yes or no? They can update their designs if they want, or if they don't meet it, they can update it. If they do meet it, they proceed to construction. And if they still don't meet the design guidelines, they go back to the regular conditional use or zoning change that exists today. Okay, let's see here. Again, streamlines the process, encourages investment, encourages housing options. And I can tell you, I've had people walk in the door. This has to do with accessory apartments. Elderly parent who suddenly cannot live where they're living. They can't. They lived in that house for 40 years, and the son or the daughter, they don't want to put them in assisted living because they're maybe not quite right for that. And so they say, well, let's build an accessory apartment in our backyard, but they find out it takes 75 days, and the answer might be no. Now, chances are the answer is yes, but sometimes it's just too onerous because they're dealing with other issues. So this streamlines that process, and okay, so we've talked about that. Here's the other alternative that we could probably do, and that's an administrative permit. And it's kind of a hybrid between the by right and what we currently do. We start with the planning application. There is some public notice, but not as much as we have today. We review it. It meets the requirements. We wait to see if there's enough protests, and we'll talk about that in 2 seconds. And if there aren't, they proceed to construction. Okay, so it's a little bit more money involved because they have to pay for those notices. If they meet the design requirements and there is a protest, then they have to apply for what we currently have today, which is a conditional use or a rezoning. And they also have the option, if they don't meet the design requirements, they update their designs. And if they're good to go, then they're good to go. But if they're not, they still have to apply for the conditional use or zoning change. So we've got, right now we've got 3, but we'd like to get it down to 2. So alternative 1 or alternative 2. Okay, so I just explained that. The protest would be 75% of those that were notified. Okay, if there's not enough protests, it gets approved. If it is, it has to go to the Planning Commission. So here we go. You're saying, well, how many people are you going to notify? Here's our little map. We've got this number 124. This is the subject parcel. They have asked to do something. They might be an accessory unit. It might be a compact lot house. It might be something. They would notify everyone surrounding their property where they could possibly touch. So it's the ones on the north side, the south side, the backyard, and then those across the street. And so if you pulled out the street, pretend we didn't have a street, those houses would touch that. And those are the property owners that would be notified. In this case, it's 8. So the 75% threshold is 6. There'd have to be 6 people, 6 property owners that would have to file the valid protest for it to be valid. There's a 10-day notice period and the sign goes in the yard. There we go. Again, it's faster than the current process, but it's probably going to be a little bit slower than the by right option that we talked about. There is some public notice and there is a protest option. There is, the trouble with this is there's the potential for process variability than the by right. There's a possibility that they could go through this as a protest and now they have to start all over again. Now, we apply the whatever fee they paid for this, we'd apply to the next application. But now they're looking at, we'll start the clock over at 75 days. Again, it requires context-sensitive designs that encourage walkability. So I'm going to stop right there on the zoning part and would love to hear any comments or questions because we really want to know what you think about this.
Nazir?
Thank you, Mary. How did you come up with all these suggestions and coming up with alternative 1 and 2?
Well, the by right came out of the Places for People plan. That's what's happening nationwide. Okay. And that's what the, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. That's where the by right came from. And then there was just discussion, kind of like between the planning commissions, some with staff saying, well, what if we get a lot of pushback on the by right? And we thought, well, could we come up with a hybrid option for people to consider? And that's where we got alternative 2, that there would be some notification, there would be the sign in the yard, so the people impacted most closely would be notified. Again, we always hit that little glitch that can happen with the way things are today, or with this, where you're notifying property owners, but the property owner doesn't live there. So the neighbor isn't notified anyway. So that's where we have this potential for process variability. And so that's where that came from. They were really wondering, are they going to go for this by right thing that's been adopted in so many other cities? And would it fly here?
I think it's about right. I think it's about time, and it's a great idea. It cuts through red tape. It makes it easier on the city and the staff, and makes it easier for developers in general. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's a good time to remind too that the current process does not go away. If somebody comes in and looks at our design requirements and says, no way, I want the old-fashioned way. I like that. I'm comfortable with that. They can still do that. And we certainly know how to administer that. Anyway, okay.
I think Tracy has something.
Oh, okay.
Tracy, did you have something?
No, I'm sorry. I thought I was on mute. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Just want to make sure you got in
But,
there.
you know, I think this is great. We need to make it easier for development and to build our city up. I love it. Reduce the red tape.
That's great. Thank you.
Hey, this is Chris. Mary, thanks for presenting this. I would just add that it's, it's just anything we can do to promote fresh development in areas that you highlighted earlier at the beginning is a great thing. So especially if you're not getting rid of the normal way and you're just providing more options, this is good.
Yeah. I think also what it can do in a neighborhood that's experiencing some decline, it can help pause that hemorrhaging. Somebody bought a home, it was worth much, they expected to go up in value by a certain amount every year, and it's not. And maybe it's not losing value, but it's not gaining value. And maybe this can help by people investing in an area to help preserve property values of people around there. Okay.
And Mary, this is Becky. Just one quick comment that was made, from when we had this at workshop at City Council that I really appreciated is, this is urban infill its finest. And then when there's an empty lot, especially in these areas, it not only is blight, but it also increases the likelihood of crime and other activity that we really want to avoid. So, having an empty lot really doesn't benefit the city. It doesn't benefit the neighborhood. So this is just a really creative and unique way, and staff need to be applauded that they got so much community engagement and put so much time into thinking of this in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, I think this goes back to one of the earlier purposes of all this, and that is we're invested in infrastructure, our streets, our water lines, our sewer lines, et cetera, but we're also providing police protection in these areas. We're providing fire protection, and removing a vacant lot where there's maybe some trouble going on only reduces the pressure on those organizations, and including code enforcement, where they're out with these, I'll call them repeat offenders, where a lot just continually is a problem in a neighborhood, and it's frightening to people living there. So, okay. If you have no other questions on the zoning part of this, I'm happy to move on to the land bank. Okay, all right. So here we've got our land bank proposal. And we want to know, again, we just want to know what you think about it and let us know if we're on the right track. A bank is a government entity like a city or a county that is focused on conversion of land to productive use. And the focus is on vacant land, abandoned land, and tax delinquent property. Now here's an example. This is a couple of pictures that we got from Habitat for Humanity. They bought this lot here on the left. You can see what a mess it is. And they cleaned that up and they built some houses, and land places like Mennonite Housing and Habitat and others would be partners with the land bank in doing exactly this kind of infill development. In our research in pulling all this together, we found 9 communities. Some of them are in Kansas, but some of them are not. So when you go out of state, the laws in those states are a little different. But we examined the organization, their composition, what were their priorities, and how they operate. And I'll just give you an example of what priorities can change. You go up to Kansas City, Kansas. They have a huge land bank with thousands of properties. They have 7 full-time staff. I mean, it is a real operation. They build houses, they rehab houses, they do it all. And so that's their priority. They will take any piece of property that does not sell at a tax sale, even if they have no plans for the property. Now that's an extreme on one end of the spectrum. On another end of the spectrum are some of the small towns in Kansas that were harmed by the Great Recession. And you had a developer, he was building out 30 homes in a subdivision in a small town, and then the recession hit and they had to walk away, and the town is left with those specials. They've already maybe put in some streets. So their land bank is only those 30 properties, or maybe it was like the 27 properties that didn't sell. So their priority, all right? So the state law allows a tremendous amount of latitude to cities or counties that are doing this in terms of just what is it that you want to do. So here we go, the alignment. Board members, and there's a board of trustees in a land bank. The board members are appointed by our elected officials, our city council. And we could either engage in in-house rehab, or we would go through housing through partnerships. And partnerships can be with nonprofit organizations like Habitat, or it can be housing partners in our for-profit community too. We want both of that. This particular land bank really is not interested in in-house rehab. We're not in the rehab business. We're not in the home development business. We want to to support our partners out there in the community. But our focus is on revitalization, affordable housing, and home ownership. Now we understand, because every land bank, it requires a subsidy from the city for its operations. Because understand, the land bank is not competing with every land speculator out there trying to find the best piece of land that they could turn for a profit. That's not its purpose. It's going after distressed property. And in order to do this, it has to be, at least the salary of the person running it has to be paid for. But we're already paying for a lot of this stuff through our code enforcement people. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, and again, fire and police and stuff like that, we're already paying for it. It's just, it gets absorbed into these other departments. So the staffing, of course, can vary from 1 to 7. We're looking at 1 person probably. So here are the tools that are available to a land bank. It's the ability to abate special assessments and back taxes. They can manage and maintain properties as they acquire a piece of property, and they have to get it ready so that one of the development partners can do something with it. They also can sort through ownership and title issues. That can really happen. You could have a really distressed little house and nobody knows who owns it. They can't find the owner. Well, if you can't find the owner, you can't sell it. And so now it becomes worth less and less and less, and it doesn't really have value. It's now a liability, right? And so the land bank can have the expertise to sort through all of that ownership and title issues with a focus on revitalization. Now we have on our website, we have the draft mission statement. We have the ordinance that we'd like to go forward with. We've got the bylaws and we've got policies. Once an ordinance is passed to create the land bank, then it's the council's responsibility to appoint the board of trustees, and then the board of trustees will adopt their bylaws and draft their policies. We as staff, of course, started researching all these other cities on what they were doing, and we've put together draft bylaws and policies, so it gives the board of trustees something to start with. All right. And again, we also have our frequently asked questions on there that we are updating probably every week. I would say that some of the policies we're looking at are, we'd rather go after a vacant lot than a lot with a house, because there's less to do. There's a quicker turnaround. And I know one of our city attorneys, Jeff Van Zant, says there's enough vacant lot out there for us to go after to keep us busy for years. And so we want to go after the low hanging fruit because you can have immediate success. And then the next thing would be, yes, we might take in a lot with a house, but no one can be living there. We will never go after a piece of property if somebody lives there. Anyway, so this is our mission statement. We want to promote revitalization. We're consistent with our plan, and we have the management and transfer of properties that are deemed underutilized. And this is really property that's sort of been left behind by the regular market, the regular real estate market. So I told you about establishing the board of trustees. One of the things the board of trustees can do and will do is they will create from time to time advisory committees, especially if they're looking at working in a particular neighborhood or a particular section of the ECA, the Established Central Area. They will want kind of that local input from people that can advise them, because the board of trustees really needs to be people that have high technical skills in real estate finance, real estate law, construction, demolition, all of those kinds of things, so that they're doing things correctly. And you do not learn those things on the fly. All right. You need people with lots of experience that have done that and are also willing to serve on the committee and understand that they can't touch land bank property. If they're working someplace, they don't touch land bank property. They have no conflicts of interest allowed. So anyway, we focus on the established central area, although the way the ordinance is written, it will go citywide because every once in a while there's something outside the line that just might, and I mean might, be a problem. And then the land bank can investigate that and see if it's to their liking. And understand the land bank is only going after property or will entertain a donation of property if it has a reasonable idea of how it will get used. They don't just pick up a lot and say, gee, I wonder what we're going to do with this. And it hangs in the land bank for years and years. No. The idea is they get it in, they do what's necessary to take care of it, but they have a general idea of where it's going to go, what it's going to do. And understand that they're not always looking for the organization that will pay them the most money. Sometimes it's a lot for a community garden. They're not going to make any money on that, but that might be something beneficial to a group in a particular neighborhood, or a park or something like that. It has benefit to the neighborhood, but it doesn't really pencil out very well, but that's okay. So the land bank ordinance continued. It's the purchase, sale, or transfer of property. And the way the system works is the land bank functions as an advisory group to the city council. So everything that's bought, everything that's donated, everything that is given away or sold has to be approved by the city council. And first and foremost, our state law does not allow the use of eminent domain by any land bank. Oops. So here's kind of an idea of how it works. The applicant comes in, they're interested in a piece of property, they make a proposal. The Board of Trustees evaluates that proposal along with any proposals that might be out there, and they make a recommendation to the council. And with that, they can move forward or not. Okay, so again, the priorities are affordable housing, neighborhood revitalization, and it can include something other than just housing. It can include retail and commercial, if that's an opportunity, as well as things like open space. I think I kind of ticked on this earlier. They want a quick property transition. Now, if you have title problems, it's not going to be quick, but they're not interested in just hanging on to property to hang on to property. Okay, they have a strategic answer to why they would bring something into the bank, because they have an idea of how it should be used. And so we'd have an application process. Again, city council is that oversight committee. And just to let you know, land bank meetings will be open to the public. So we have some frequently asked questions on our website. And again, we're going to be adding those. I'll be working on that tomorrow for sure. Any questions on the land bank specifically?
I read through the bylaws real quick while you were talking. It looks pretty standard for how they're set up across the DABs, especially the formation of the committee. The only thing that's different you referenced was who sits on it.
Yeah.
My only concern is the transparency of, maybe who's selected, the transparency of not, who's going to hold them accountable. So I guess that would lead me to later in the future when we're talking about that ethics policy, that might be a good time to bring that up again. So that's my only comment.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question, Mary.
Yeah.
The idea came to me just as you were talking. Would it be possible for a landowner to donate their land to the land bank?
Yes, they can, but the land bank has the right to refuse it.
Okay.
And if they donate their land, they cannot be a landlord and they're going to kick out their tenant.
Okay.
Okay, it'd have to be unoccupied housing. But like I said before, especially in the early years of this, if this goes through, we're going to be looking at vacant lots first. But yes, they can land or they can simply accept a donation. But they want to be very strategic about doing it.
So this is Dee. What are the drawbacks or the criticisms of an approach like this?
Really, the criticism that has come up over the years has been that it's really just that it's really eminent domain and you're hiding that. But again, state law prohibits that. And since we have the land bank and any application that comes in will be transparent, and the city council again is overseeing what the land bank is doing on every type of transaction.
And the meetings of the Board of Trustees for this would be subject to open meetings law, correct?
Yes. You know, posted agenda, posted minutes, and then, you know, somehow broadcasting or opening the meeting, you know, to the public.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You bet.
anytime there's a publicly appointed board, they're subjective to COMA and CORA.
Yep.
Has there been any concern that either of these programs could lead to the image that the city's picking winners and losers, or areas that become winners or losers?
Well, when it comes to land bank property, and it's not nice to say, but they're already distressed. I mean, nobody in the real estate business wants to touch them, and they really don't have the wherewithal to and still make a profit. So, you know, I mean, part of it is that it's focused on the established central area. It's not going to be going, obviously, if you saw that map early on where we had the purple areas and the gold areas, well, they're not going after the purple areas. I mean, there might be an occasional lot or something that's causing some problems, but you know, chances are the for-profit real estate market is going after those because they can turn that around, and there's a good, you know, there's a decent profit margin for them if they go into stronger neighborhoods. So I don't picture them having the velocity of activity, because the city council is going to have to, you know, approve the budget, and that budget will determine how fast and furious they can get out there and start acquiring property.
So this is Dee. I have another question.
Thanks.
Sorry, I crossed my fingers so I'd remember. So the partners or the potential partners in this, like Mennonite Housing, Habitat for Humanity, but you mentioned that there could be for-profit companies that would be partners. Is the approach that the board would create some kind of standards and application process to become a partner of the land bank, or what does that look like?
Well, I think they're looking at, from the nonprofit organizations, they're looking at, where are you doing business? Where do you want to do business? And because they tend to go into neighborhoods and do more than one project at a time. All right. The land bank is simply going to have to evaluate which of the for-profit entities, if their proposal is better than the other. I will tell you something from talking to the folks at Habitat. They will say they need the for-profit, you know, builder, developer building alongside them in the same neighborhood in order to be successful. You can't just have all Habitat houses up and down the block and the next block and the next. That does not work. And So having a mixture is really necessary to make it successful and worthwhile.
So Bob the builder can come in and build or apply for buying one of the properties to build just that one house or duplex or something like that. And Joe the builder can do the same and so on, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions from DAB members? Okay, I think we've got somebody from the public here. Bruce, you would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that the land bank cannot obtain property unless somebody is willing to sell it or donate it. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, and it cannot be occupied. Now, if it was
Okay.
the owner occupant, that person could, of course, apply to donate and
Okay.
saying, I'm moving, but they can't
And then
push somebody out.
the end result of this does not include the land bank being a renter.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
You bet.
All right. Anything
Right, I
else
would
for
just-
Mary?
Yeah, just finish up with, if you want to contact us in any way, we've got a nice form on our website that you can put comments. If you think of something later on, like, tomorrow, next week, whatever, please feel free to do that.
I have one more question for Mary. Is there
Sure.
something we didn't ask that other groups have asked you?
Oh, golly. I don't think it's about asking me. I think it's people, some of the concerns have been about notification. Some people say, put in all those design requirements, but still notify everybody within 200 feet. It's like, well, nobody's going to go for that. They're just going to go by the regular process today where there are no design standards, except a little word that says, make sure your accessory dwelling unit is compatible. But there's really nobody reviewing the designs. And there are no design standards. That's something I got. When did I get that? Oh,
I guess the feedback really from the district advisory boards whose neighborhoods would be most directly impacted by this would be, I think a more critical voice, although, we, as you said, we might see something like that, but it would be fairly rare in our area.
probably, yeah. And there's always somebody who thinks it's just the city wants to densify everything. And it's like, no one walks into our department saying, I want to build an accessory dwelling unit, but I have no need for it. I just happen to have all this extra money and I thought I'd build something. That just doesn't happen. They build it because they have a need.
Sure.
And we'd really like our duplexes to look better.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the information. I appreciate you coming and sticking with us this late into the evening. It's very exciting information, and I learned a lot about a land bank. I had no clue. So I feel rewarded for hanging out with you tonight and learning from you.
Yeah.
And from all the great questions and comments from my peers here. So thank you so much.
Great job,
thank
Mary.
you for sticking with me.
Yeah, great job,
All right.
Mary.
All righty.
Yeah.
Good night now.
Complex information. Thank you.
Yeah,
so
there's a
much.
lot here.
Yeah.
There's a lot here.
So thank you so much. I think that we are at the end of our agenda. Unless I miss something, we better, take a motion to adjourn before we all fall asleep.
I'll make that notion.
All right. So we have a motion to adjourn and Tracy is seconded. So all those in favor say aye.
Good night.
Bye.
And all those opposed, sweet dreams. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.